There we go. We are now live. Hello and welcome. Happy Saturday. We are glad that you are here with us today in this TENS webinar on year-round stewardship formation best practices. I am Davey Gerhard and I am the Executive Director of TENS, the Episcopal Network for Stewardship. We are so grateful for your participation today. This is one of a series of webinars we're doing all year. We have about one a month scheduled to help you get ready for your fundraising this year. So I'll be sending around a link at the end of this and also in the email that follows to remind you where you can go to look at and register for future webinars. We want you to be very well prepared and ready to go for your stewardship and fundraising this year. I would love to introduce my good friend, collaborator, and board member, the Very Reverend Matthew Woodward, Dean of Trinity Cathedral in Sacramento. Matthew, welcome.
Thank you, Davey. It's lovely to be here with you and with all the people on the call. Yes, I'm the Dean of Trinity Cathedral in Sacramento. I've been here for 8 months now, so I'm still trying to get used to that a little bit. I arrived in the middle of pandemic land, and I'm also trying to get used to people calling me Dean. It feels like I've got a new first name, but lovely to be here and lovely to see you, Davey, and to be here with all of you.
Thank you, and thank you for joining me. It's always nice to have a partner in presenting. You'll see as we move through today, Matthew and I are going to swap off presenting and fielding questions. So, so come along for the ride. We're happy that you're here. Today, we hope that we will cover a few specific things when it comes to year-round stewardship formation. We're going to learn how to separate stewardship from fundraising. This is something that TENS has been working on pretty much from our existence. Stewardship is in our name. And when we talk about stewardship and when we think about stewardship, when we use the word stewardship in church, we often mean fundraising. And yeah, we do mean that, but we also mean everything else that goes into the relationships and the way that we are grateful for and share all of the gifts that we've been given by all of creation. So stewardship is a really big word, and we're going to learn some tips and tricks on how to separate it from our fundraising. This could be a theological position, perhaps. We're going to talk about growing generosity and cultivating it as a practice. We aren't necessarily born to be generous, right? Some of our first acts are just about survival and being given things. We don't learn to recognize that everything that we have is a gift until we are taught that later on. And so as we learn this skill, we have to remind ourselves that gratitude and generosity go together. And so we'll be walking through some ways to create habits that help us or reinforce generosity and gratitude in our lives. And finally, we'll be talking about building out a calendar of year-round stewardship-focused activities. We want you to take advantage of all of the things that the church gives us, our liturgical season, the various ministries that you are called to do in your congregations, and all of the other tools that we can help provide for you to do year-round stewardship. When we only pull stewardship out of its box in the fall campaign, we're missing great opportunities for the rest of the year to reinforce why we do this and how we raise our money and how we contribute to our communities at large. So hopefully today, through these 3 learning objectives, we'll get you covered for some year-round stewardship. So stewardship is separate from fundraising. If it isn't about fundraising, well, then what is it? First and foremost, I want to create a theological position, perhaps, that stewardship is about how we create impact in our community. As we move through fundraising in our churches, we are learning a lot from the nonprofits that work around us. And they help us understand that more and more we need to be able to measure our impact. We need to be able to measure the impact that we have on our communities. And this is how we quantify, if you will, our sharing of all of the resources. So when we talk about stewardship, we're really talking about the ways we give back, the ways that we contribute to the world at large, the kingdom of God, the vineyard, all of the metaphors that we have to help emphasize that what we do is create impact and change in the world. Stewardship is a way to think about all our resources. It's not just about our fundraising program or our wonderfully designed stewardship website. It's also about how we train our stewardship committees, how we train our members, and how we form them throughout the year, giving them tools for learning and to deepen their own understanding of stewardship. When we have people who understand why they give and what their money is going for, they become more deeply engaged in the process of being generous. This is really a part of what we're trying to do with a year-round stewardship formation program. It's our effort and our work product. So that means both the things that we do at church, the ways we roll up our sleeves and contribute and volunteer to all the things that make our church run, but it's also the things we do in our daily lives, raising our families, pursuing our careers, taking our education seriously. And all of those things also are a part of our stewardship. They inform us, they help us be more capacious people in the world, and that in turn gives us more ways to participate in our community and in our impact. Stewardship is about our spending and our saving as well. So our personal budgets, our household budgets. This isn't just to say the more you control your spending and saving, the more you'll have to give away. We're not trying to talk about it from that standpoint, that transactional standpoint. But what we're saying is that all the resources we've been given have been given to us to steward. And how we earn them, how we save them, how we spend them, how we invest them, how we give them away. These are all moral choices, ethical choices, intentional choices. And that's a part of being responsible stewards for all that we've been given. It's our wisdom and our teaching as well. I like to think about our wisdom when I talk about the time and talent pieces of our three-legged stool of time, talent, and treasure that we so often talk about in stewardship. Our wisdom, that collected experience from the years we've been alive, from the successes we've had and the failures that we've had, this is all what we use to bring to our churches, to strengthen them, to help them, to advise our vestries and our clergy and our teams about how we can be better. Our church relies on our own wisdom and action in order to function, to be better at doing the work of church in the world. Most importantly, I think stewardship is about our relationships with each other. We'll be talking about this more as we talk about our gratitude and generosity practices. But in general, when we think about stewardship, it's about how we relate to each other. It's about how we love each other. It's about how we talk to each other and respect each other. It's about how we disagree and how we come back from disagreement. All of these things are a part of stewarding the relationships that God has blessed us with, put people in our lives and put us in their lives. So when you look at that, stewardship is really separate from fundraising. It's a big topic. I want to reiterate creating impact in our community and how this relates to stewardship. A few years ago, a consulting group that works nationally and ecumenically created a study, and it looked at impact and resources in faith communities across the country. The name of the organization is Partners for Sacred Spaces, and they do some great work. And I'll send you along the link to the study later. What they've discovered, and this is fantastic. What they discovered that in every church, synagogue, and mosque, each of those institutions in their place, doing their ministry, opening their doors, being present, contributes an average of $1.1 million of service to their community. So this is from the tiniest house of worship to the largest megachurch, resources at all levels as an average number. But if you think about the tens of thousands of religious institutions that exist in our country, and you think about each one of them contributing $1 million or more to their communities, just by hosting 12-step groups, being open, doing other ministries, social ministries, or justice ministries, advocacy, the ways that we help our communities really make an impact. When we can understand what that impact is, we have a really beautiful sense of teaching our own members how they impact our church through their gifts. We remember that we do more than show up on Sundays. We do more than the ministries even that we can name or identify. All of the work that we do contributes to that impact in our communities. So staying here, being present, using our resources is really important. Throughout the year, I hope that you will find ways to highlight your impact in your communities, in your newsletters, on your website, in your announcement time, in your sermons. Find ways to remind people what their money is going for, what their time and talent is going for, how the church is using these resources to do ministry, and what the impact of those ministries are. For example, it's great to say we have a food program. It's even better to say, how many people did you feed this week? It's wonderful to talk about your back to school backpack program. It's even greater to say, we put together 150 backpacks and gave them to these students in this area, and have some testimonials that talk about the impact of that. This helps reinforce what we're doing and why we're doing it. We can do that through interviews, videos, stories, newsletter articles, all the ways that you can think of to broadcast that message. Please get involved. This is the way we remind people of their impact. So those metrics are really important. Learn how to, we're not always good about this in church, right? We're not always good about being able to quantify or measure in impact what we do with our time. But take some time to ask those questions, learn about our ministries and what the real impact is on their community. Stewardship is everything we have been given, everything that we've built, and everything that we have. We should be asking, how can the church use my expertise or my training? What is it that I do in my day job? What is it that I went to school to study? What is it that I have that the church could benefit from? Do I have a skill? Do I have an interest? Am I willing to lead a class? It is fascinating if you ask people to come up with content for forums or Wednesday nights, what they might do. Maybe it's a nonprofit that they volunteer with. Maybe it's something else that they know about and are willing to do a book study or a topical presentation. This is a great way to keep people involved in giving gifts, giving back to the church. How can the church use my strength or skills on a project? So this is, building the set for the Christmas pageant, but it's also redesigning the website. It's thinking strategically about your communications plan. It's about thinking through how we communicate with our members if there's an emergency. All of these things need processes behind them, and people who are good at process, people who do it in their daily lives, can help us think this through. Give those tools also as a gift to our church. And of course, how can my finances help the church? Not just my gift, but my investments, my retirement, my planned gifts. How can everything that I have accumulated, everything that I've thought about, everything that I've worked hard to attain, how can the church use that? And how can I do best with that? We'll be talking later this year specifically about planned giving. And that's where not just giving gifts from our income, but from our entire life can help us help the church. And we'll be talking about that all year long as we think about these programs. Stewardship, finally, is about our relationship, our caring for each other. And so as we move through this, I want to encourage us to think about our stewardship as our friendships at church, as our relationships. In these days of social distancing and not being able to run into each other at coffee hour or on Sunday mornings, are we still staying in touch? Is there someone that you miss talking to? Maybe a phone call that you need to make, or an email that you could drop, or a social media post you could make. Our churches put together prayer lists, and we often pray the names of the people who are asking for our prayers on Sunday mornings. And we make those lists available to our membership. Spend some time in daily thought or weekly thought about the people who have requested prayers from your church, not just within the liturgy, but at home in your own meditation. This is a way to strengthen your relationship with each other. Send those reminders on Facebook that you get that it's someone's birthday. Send them a message. Remind them that you're thinking about them. Every year or every day when I log into Facebook and I see, 4 of your friends have birthdays today, send them a message. I think, I don't have time for that. Really, it's happy birthday. It takes seconds to write. But maybe I don't do it. And then when my own birthday comes around and I get all these messages from people that I haven't spoken with in a while, I'm like, oh geez, I should do that to others too, because it feels really nice, right? It's a really simple way to send a message and remind people on their anniversaries, on their birthdays, on their milestones, that you're thinking about them and that you're still connected to them. Please, please stay connected to each other. Finally, is there advice that you can provide? Is there help? This isn't talking about barging in or making pastoral relationships that you don't need to be making. But if you understand that there's someone who could maybe use your help, maybe it's in an interview process in a job, maybe you could introduce them to the right people. Maybe it's someone who's trying to acquire a new skill and you could lead them in the right direction. This is how we use our relationships at church, the things that we learn about each other to help each other and to strengthen our community. Before we move on to our gratitude and generosity segment, I'm wondering if there are any questions that have come in.
Well, Joanna Shreve has made a comment in the chat thread for Davey, and Joanna has said, everything is a tool for stewardship, including spiritual gifts. It's a great tool to help people discover these. It was a seminal moment in my own spiritual journey. I think she was picking up and commenting on something you were saying.
Yeah, it is a spiritual gift. It's to recognize how we can share. And when we deepen our own tools and share them abundantly, we're reinforcing that spirituality within ourselves, right? These are iterative, beautiful processes. All right.
Any other questions? I don't see any popping up.
Okay. Let's talk about generosity, Matthew.
Shall I do that?
Yes, please.
Yes, let me go ahead. Hi, everyone. Generosity. I love this tree. I love this tree partly because one of the things that helps foster a sense of generosity and gratitude in me is nature. I guess she's a 15-month-old Australian Shepherd mix that makes me go for a walk every morning. And I'm so grateful because I feel like she's my chaplain. She makes me go and pray. I walk through parks. I see the sunrise. I look at the light coming through the trees, and I just love it. So that tree is a reminder of that. And I want to say this next bit of the presentation is going to feel like a little bit, why are they telling us this? This is not to do with raising money, but it is and it isn't. Having a spirit of generosity, developing a practice of gratitude actually will just make your life better. It's a spiritual practice. I say prayers regularly, part of my priest. I'm committed to that. I also try and foster of gratitude in my life. And it's a skill that needs to be cultivated, and it can be cultivated in a variety of ways. I try and also practice positive thinking, particularly when I'm interacting with people. Not always easy when people aren't necessarily being positive back, but it's something that you can foster. And again, it's a skill that can be developed. It's a habit that can be developed. And random acts, we'll get to that in a moment. But I like this quote: every generous act and every perfect gift comes from above. The recognition of a practice of gratitude or a practice of generosity in your life is acknowledging that God has given us everything, that we are on this world because our lives are a gift. Every gift comes from God. So when we practice gratitude and generosity, we are actually doing the work of God in our lives. We can jump to the next slide. Growing generosity and gratitude, daily habits. For what am I grateful today? Davey, can I share my screen? Possible?
Yeah.
I think I did this last time. Am I allowed again? Am I able again?
You are now a co-host. Go for it.
Okay, so let me see if I can get this right.
I think I have to stop.
This will stop other screens. I can do that. Here we go. I love cell phones as a part of my habit of gratitude. I take photographs. I don't know if you all have cell phones. They're a wonderful tool. They can get in the way and they can interrupt, but also I can capture these moments. This is a moment where one of my retired priests and her spouse were serving at the altar together for a midweek service. I took a photo because I just was over the moon at this lovely touching moment. Here's a moment that somebody caught of me greeting somebody at the door with a mask on. Here are my wardens. I'm grateful for them. I took a selfie. People that know me know that I take selfies. My cell phone is a tool for practicing generosity. When I go on my walks in the morning and look at the sun coming through the trees, I try and capture pictures of them. I totally love these moments. That's me. And that's my dog. She makes me go and pray. And that's back to Mary. So I'm going to stop sharing that and come back to you, and you can start sharing the slides again, Davey. Thank you. My phone is a part of my daily habit of gratitude. I take photographs of things I'm grateful for. The wonderful thing about my phone is then I can then turn that into a way of expressing gratitude. I can send to Mary with that picture of her and her spouse celebrating the Eucharist at the altar and say, this touched me, this was beautiful, I loved it, thank you for that. I sometimes send photos of my dog or the dawn to people that I think of. Also, what I've realized is when I am walking, I'm praying. And what happens when I'm praying, I don't know about you, but people pop into my head and I think of them all of a sudden. And what I've tried to foster the ability to do, Davey mentioned this a second ago, when Facebook someone's birthday, just write happy birthday. When somebody pops into my head, I'll often just text them and I'll say, I was just thinking of you and praying for you. I hope you're okay. Or if something that they did, I was grateful for, I'll send them a little text saying, thank you for that. I did that to my director of operations the other day, and he responded by saying, I was just doing my job. Why are you thanking me for that? And like, they weren't just doing their job. They went beyond the norm and they did something extra, and it was really kind and generous. They made sure that awards that I was wanting to give to members of the congregation at the annual meeting were hand delivered to their door in the middle of the annual meeting. And then the volunteers did a kind of a rang the doorbell and ran. And I asked them to go, and they went to their front door and they found a gift on the front door of their house. In the middle of COVID, little touches are nice. And my director of operations made that happen. So I said a special thank you. And he was like, that was just my job. And I'm like, I don't care. I still want to say thank you. The other thing that my phone does, I don't know about you with this, and it's a mixed blessing. It sometimes pops photos up from the past, from years gone by, on this day 5 years ago, or on this day 2 years ago. Most of the time that's great, except when it shows me pictures of my ex. But we'll leave that to the side. When it shows me a picture of a baby I baptized 5 years ago, I love it. It reminds me to text that family and say, I'm thinking of you. There are other ways of setting systems like that up to remind you to share gratefulness and gratitude. When you see something doing something nice or good, thank them for it. Not personally, but on behalf of humanity. Write an email to colleagues or employees, family or friends, thanking them for particular things they did. These are called caring systems. Just have some system that reminds you to express gratitude. And the last one is the hardest thing, because I am English, so I am constitutionally not capable of doing this, but accept gratitude of others towards you. I, on my desk, have a pile of thank you notes that people have written me since I've become the dean, and I'm trying very hard to practice the art of reading them and just absorbing the gratitude and saying, if I am trying to foster a habit of gratitude and somebody else has done the same, I'm going to love recognizing that in them. Thank you. Can we go to the next slide?
Yeah, I think that's so important, Matthew. It's recognizing it as well, right?
Yeah.
So we have, it's part of the grace. And John Hammer wrote to us as we were talking, just to you and me, Matthew. He says, generosity begets gratitude, begets grace, begets generosity. And it's a lovely cycle that we fall into when we recognize that gratitude, generosity, and grace are all tied together. And that's—
say one thing about—
yeah.
Let me say one thing about that. Am I doing all of this as a tactic to raise money? Well,
no, are you?
I mean, let's be honest, the church needs money to survive, and that's a part of the dynamic. But actually, I'm not doing it for that. I'm doing it because in learning this discipline, I've discovered my life feels better. I'm just experiencing more joy. Also, actions that turn into habits can also begin to form cultures. And if you have got a culture of generosity and gratitude in your institution, when you need to ask for money, you're asking in the context of that culture, as opposed to a culture of, we don't have enough, there isn't enough to go around, we can't possibly do this. And so I like to foster a sense of gratitude and generosity when I'm not asking for money specifically. And I do the tactic. I do it because I just enjoy it.
I love that.
It makes my life feel—
it does.
Yeah.
It makes our lives
Thank
better.
you.
Yeah, thank you. So somebody asked us just to repeat what we'd said about generosity. So generosity begets gratitude, begets grace, begets generosity, and it just keeps going. It's a beautiful cycle and a habit. Matthew, we've had a couple of other questions come in, and before we get too far away from it, I wanted to say, so Cynthia has asked, once you receive the gratitude notes from others, do we send a thank you for the gratitude? How do we keep this chain going, and do we?
I mean, that's a great question, Cynthia. And I would say, like, if you are practicing gratitude, you don't necessarily need it to be focused on the one thing. There will be another opportunity. If that person is a generous person that sent you a note, they're going to do kind things at some point. That's going to be a part of their habit. Notice one of the other things that they do, and say thank you. I also, one thing that I practice is if somebody comes up to me and says, my goodness, the director of music played a beautiful introit on Sunday, I'll say, did you tell them? And often people tell me, and I say, did you tell them? And then I make a note in my mind to go and tell them, somebody in the congregation made this comment, but I will ask the person in the congregation, please go and tell the director of music that that was your experience on Sunday. So they get it from two different places. And it kind of increases the impact of that. And so if you think, is there enough to thank you? Oftentimes we like let it go. We just like let that moment just drift on the air, but don't. Think of some concrete thing to do. And then there's a great question from Phoebe about our congregation is largely older and does not use technology. These days of COVID, it's sad about relationships not growing. What ideas outside of technology do you have? A number of people have discovered a variety of different models, Phoebe, that are really useful. I'm a technology user, and I understand that you might not be. What we've been really trying to do at the cathedral, grateful to have staff and volunteers to be able to do this. But I've been asking people to make phone calls, to use kind of older forms of technology, to talk to people and to check in with them. Old-fashioned phone trees can work. If you're a rector, asking your vestry to divide up the tree and call everybody and just check in. We've been discovering that some people use the email, some people use cell phones, some people can use Zoom, some people can't. Some people are feeling extra isolated at the moment. And I've gradually been asking people, I fortunately had a pastoral intern the last 3 months. And I said, your main job is to find the people that are not connecting via technology and reach out to them and say, what can we do? Do you need anything? And most of those people were just grateful that they got a call and it was meaningful. I don't know if that answers the question, Phoebe.
Yeah, that's a great answer. You know, the beautiful thing about our cell phones is that they are also phones, right? So we can still use that technology, and many of us know how to use them. Another story that I tell, actually, it comes from your former call, Matthew, as the rector of Transfiguration in San Mateo. When at the beginning of the pandemic, your congregation was really good about forming intergenerational teams of Gen Z and boomers or our mature folks, and teaching how to get on Zoom. Teaching people, walking through the system of how do you connect to these various tools. Our grandchildren, our children, our nieces and nephews, they know how to use these tools. And if we ask them or send a cohort out into the world to teach this, it's a beautiful example of how we can bring people along. I think we do need to acknowledge that not everybody uses technology. And I think that COVID has shown us the power of technology. And so maybe it's time to teach more about how to use it in our churches as well.
Yeah, I had an experience the other day. This is an answer to Phoebe's question and furthering the conversation I'm just having, Davey. A member of the congregation who is 99, who has not connected all the way through Zoom because she does not do that. Somebody was still connected to her. And when we began gentle regathering, she lives in a home just opposite the cathedral. And they said, can we make sure that she gets to a service? She can't do the online registration. She can't do Facebook. She can't do all of these things. And I was like, yes, let's make an extra effort. And then we began to notice there are a few other people like that. And we were trying to make sure with our limited gathering capacity at the cathedral at the moment, that not everybody came every week. But then I said, those people have been isolated for the whole of the last year and don't use technology, then come as back. If they feel safe, if they're vaccinated, if they're okay, we'll help them come along. So one of the ushers walks across the street each Sunday and walks this parishioner in. She's 99. She always looks stunning. She dresses for church. Her mask is coordinated with her jacket. It's lovely. And I've had a chance to sit and, socially distanced chat with her, which has been really good. It was nice that another member of the congregation noticed this and noticed it was important. So yes, should we change slides though?
Yeah, one more question or one more contribution. Susan tells us that they're using telecare. Telecare is a system of kind of like the phone tree that you discussed earlier, Matthew. I know it's popular in the Diocese of Arizona, where it seems Susan is from. So they've been using telecare for a team of volunteers that calls everyone in the parish. And they've discovered needs that would not have been known otherwise. So then they could help them. This is sort of saying what you are. When you ask the question, you discover how other people are needing that. If other folks are interested in telecare, one of our board members, Canon Timothy Dombeck in the Diocese of Arizona, is sort of an expert in it, and he's developed a little list or a page, one pager for us, and I'll send that out in our notes today. Let's change slides and keep moving forward, Matthew. Thanks.
So thinking positively, this is really interesting. Goodwill is a great word. In the middle of COVID, I took on a new ministry at the cathedral, and have experienced goodwill from most people. We're trying to figure out how to build community in the middle of the strangest time. And I haven't experienced goodwill from everybody, let's just say. There have been some tender moments, but I have been trying to practice the discipline of assuming goodwill, even if somebody is feeling upset at me, and recognizing that they're a child of God, they're struggling with COVID, and that there is a gift in whatever they are saying to me. There is something meaningful, something helpful. Enter each situation expecting a positive outcome, anticipating that those around you are acting from places of goodness. Nobody gets up in the morning wanting to be difficult or and this is sometimes a difficult thing to practice, particularly when anxiety is free floating at the moment because of COVID. I always tell myself, if somebody is even complaining at me, whatever they're complaining about, if they're being difficult, there's a gift in there. There is something at the heart of that they want to communicate that I need to hear. And there is a reason for them wanting to say what they're saying to me right now, even if it's difficult. Assume others are practicing, and you might say, well, is that a bit naive? Yes, accuse me of being naive. Assume other people are practicing this desire to assume goodwill, because your life will be better for it. If your study is being cynical, then that's the way you're going to experience the world. I'd rather experience a world full of goodwill than a world full of cynicism. And sometimes people might not be practicing that, but still look for the gift in the interaction that you're having with somebody. Oh gosh, forgive yourself. We can get stuck on this, and it can become, if we make a mistake, if we do something wrong, if we haven't practiced assuming goodwill, if we haven't practiced generosity, if we haven't heard the gift in the heart of somebody's comment, we can get stuck there. But actually, there are loads more opportunities if you just keep moving. So forgive yourself, understand that we make mistakes, correct and move forward, and let people know when you've made a correction based on some piece of advice or complaint that they shared. If there is a gift in the middle of someone's complaint of a piece of information that I didn't know I needed, say to them, thank you for pointing that out. That was helpful. We managed to do this because you said that. and you helped us grow as an institution. Banish jaded outlooks and give second chances. I think I've been covering that, and yeah, how many second chances should we give? I think somebody talked about this once with forgiveness.
It's a story
I think Jesus talked about that. I think it was 70 times 7 or 77 times or some multiple of 7, which in my mind does not mean have a notebook in your pocket with everyone's name on it and you check off every time that they've wronged you or you've given them a second chance until you reach 77 times and then you stop. It means that you're meant to lose count of how many times you give somebody another opportunity. No questions have come up thus far, so let's dive into the next slide. Random acts. There are lots of things you can do to grow generosity. Make an extra pound of lasagna for a sick friend, buy a cup of coffee, person in line, buy a cup of coffee for one of your work colleagues and bring it in for them. Know what your friends or your work colleagues' coffee orders are. What do they normally do? Recognize that so that you can get it for them. Share your pocket change. The technological things I shared at the beginning, take photos and share them. Join a team, build sets for the pageant, coach a team or run a youth event, work a phone bank. We have an outdoor space at our cathedral that was an undeveloped lot. And just in the middle of Lent, I was thinking, be great if we could open this space up for worship at Easter, because we could be outside, but it's not really ready. So my junior warden put together a work team to go through and pick up nails, pick up broken glass, get rid of weeds, clean the space, organize it. Can I share my screen again?
Of course.
Davey?
Yes.
Last time when I made a presentation, this hadn't happened, but now it's happened. So it's not the best build. It's a vacant lot behind the cathedral, but we set it up as a worship space for Easter Day. And a team of people made that happen. Join a team and participate. I also want to show you this. This is our bishop. Somebody from home took a photograph because I asked them to, and they sent it in. This is the bishop on the live stream on the TV. This is me on the live stream on the TV. You can tell from the pixelation. I quite like the pictures though, because it kind of says this is one way we're reaching out to people. Here's some more of Easter Park. Here's our bishop on the front steps of the church. A team made this happen. Oh, here's me with my puppet, which I occasionally use. And there's another picture somewhere here that's fun. Oh, there's the bishop again. This one, I was going to show you this one. The ears kept on falling off the puppet, so I put them on me instead. And here's our bishop, and she was experiencing worship in the open air with members of her diocesan family, and she was overjoyed to be able to do that on Easter Day, and it was a great gift. All of that was possible because people joined a team. Do you want to go back to the slide, Davey? People joined a team and they made something happen. You can coach a team or run a youth event, work a phone bank, support a cause, cleaning up the neighborhood, volunteering on Saturday in a soup kitchen. One of the things that happened in our cathedral is we used to have a meal for the unhoused, and because of COVID restrictions, we couldn't do that. What the team that run that has started to do is to once a month on a Saturday, come in and use the cathedral kitchen in a socially distanced manner and cook meals to take out to the unhoused. And that's been really meaningful. Spread the love, promote a church event to friends, co-workers. Have you invited a friend to church? Do people do that? I love it if they can come along to an event that's full of fun, creativity, and life. I think that's a wonderful thing to be able to do, and we don't normally do it habitually. The last thing I like is give credit where it's due. Oh my goodness, I could say so much about this. I'll say though that in my position, I get lots of gratitude. I get lots of thanks. I'm glad that my ego is robust enough to like begin to and internalize it. Also robust enough to say when somebody says that was a great event, I can say that was nothing to do with me. I maybe showed up and I was the front person for it, but that was all developed by the director of music, the presenter. That was developed by one of my colleagues. That was developed by this volunteer. And make sure that when that's been the case, you say that. You're not reducing the amount of gratitude that's coming in your direction, increasing the net amount of gratitude. Is that the right phrase? Or the gross amount of gratitude in the world. So give credit where it's due. Thank people for the things they do. Even when they say, oh no, I don't want to be thanked. Like I break those rules sometimes. Unless they've explicitly told me it's confidential. It's if a donation is anonymous, then I won't do that. But I do like to share the thank. Do I have another slide?
Nope, that's the end of you.
Is that my next thing?
I come back.
Is that the end?
That's it.
I'll come back though, won't I?
Yeah, you're coming back. So thank you.
Questions before I hand back over?
Are there any questions about generosity or gratitude practices? You've all asked some great ones so far. I see one has just popped in. Kristen reminds us all, thank you, Kristen, for saying this. The positive energy one gives off has a ripple effect with those around them. That is so true, right? When you are positive, when you share a smile, it's catching, you know, you can like pass that on to other people throughout your day. And all of those things, when we give off a good energy, other people pick up on it and they themselves are changed. Transformation doesn't always have to look like big, huge moments, right? Transformation can be small, it can be, and then it grows big over time, right? Through its multiplication. So thank you for that, Kristen.
Maybe let me say one more thing, which I forgot to say, which is encourage people to take photographs of events at your church and send them to you. And then when they do, use them in an e-news or a newsletter or share them at some point. One thing I've also started doing is if people write me a lovely letter reflecting on some event, I ask them, can I publish your letter in a letters to the dean section in the e-news? And invariably they say yes. Sometimes they want some little thing adjusted or changed, but I think it's really one says thank you to me or to the cathedral for something that I share it. And often it comes with a photograph. They took a photograph, they sent me a letter, put the photograph and the letter in an e-news, and it perpetuates a culture of generosity. Okay, I'm done.
Great, thank you. And thank you all for your questions. You help us make this even more interesting when you ask questions. I'm going to move on with a couple of slides about some year-round practices, and Matthew and I are going to keep going with part 2 of today's conversation. We've divided up into sort of advanced, intermediate, and beginner level things that you can do this year using and building on the skills of generosity that we've just talked about to do some real and intentional formation about stewardship, generosity, and gratitude in your congregation this year. We're gonna go in reverse order. Usually you start with begin and go to advance, but we're gonna start with the advanced, the things for if you've already got this message and you're ready to go with it, some things you can do every month of the year to inculcate this practice. Right now, TENS is experimenting with a program that we'll release next year. We have a diocese going through a pilot right now, and it's called A Year of Living Generously. We have a cohort of about 35 clergy and lay members of a diocese in the Northeast that are going through these monthly conversations about stewardship. And when they signed up for them, they thought, well, are we just going to be talking about money for 12 months? And haha, we are not. We're talking about everything that's related to stewardship and moving through it. So I wanted to share with you a little piece of the work that we're doing with these monthly themes. We started off in January by using a tool called the Money Autobiography. I'll send that out later in today's links. The Money Autobiography is a list of questions that's best used in small groups because the questions are pretty intense and can be very vulnerable. And they ask us a lot. But when we do that in a small group and we look at the role of money, the attitudes about money, the guilt and shame and joys and triumphs we've had about money in a small group, we start to build some understanding of what money means in our lives. Why is money so important when we talk about stewardship, and why does money come into a conversation about church? I like to remind people, as often as they'll let me say it, that Jesus talked about money a lot. In fact, 40% of the parables, 16 out of 40, use money or possessions as either a metaphor or the direct object of the story. Why is this? Because money is how we express a lot of our thoughts, our fears, our hopes, our plans, even if we are thinking about other things like our children's educational future, for example. We couch it in terms of money and how prepared are we and what will we need to do that. So all of this helps us remember that if Jesus could spend 40% of his very short ministry talking about money, maybe we can talk about it in church too. And it's important to us because it keeps coming up. It enables things, it blocks other things, it's going to be present with us. So let's deal with it. We talked about why do we give? So these are the motivations for giving. We talked about all of the different ways that we've been inspired, people in our lives who have inspired us to be generous. And we really looked at beyond, well, including, I should say, scripture and tradition for reasons to give to church. What other motivations do we have? It's a really deep session, especially following on one where we'd been so vulnerable with each other. People really exposed some deep things about their own motivations. We talked about the power of our money. How is money an ethical choice? That is, when we spend it, where are we spending it, on what kinds of products, what went into those things, what justice issues are involved in it. Everything we do has a ripple effect out. And so we looked at those things, and it was a really, I will say it was an uncomfortable conversation at times, because we looked at some of our own bad practices, times that we'd participated in destructive systems like racism or ongoing systemic poverty. How do we look at those things and relate our own money to it? It's a really deep discussion. We had a good time doing it. And then we look at doing more with less. It was a conversation really about how we bring all of our gifts, how we think about our tools and our money and our experiences to solidify and strengthen our churches. That's as far as we've gotten. Now the rest of it, we're building it as we're flying it. We're going to talk about sort of our practices of building and growing using the theme of rogation, of May, and planting and harvesting. Planting, not harvesting yet. We're going to talk about how we fix a broken world. We're going to talk some brass tacks about preparing for pledge season. So it's always important to have a reminder about how we get our tools together and how we prepare for whatever campaign we're going to do. This particular diocese has what they call constellations, congregations that are clustered together, that are sharing sometimes clergy, definitely sharing resources. So learning how we can share with our neighboring congregations and create economies of scale. Sometimes we do this in how we produce our bulletins, or sharing administrative staff, or other sorts of things that we don't all need to duplicate the same thing from one place to another if we can share resources. We're going to talk about doing a needs assessment, really walking around your community or driving around it if it's a further spread apart community. What's happening? What are the nonprofits that are serving your community? What ministries aren't being represented? How might your church start to develop a plan to address the needs that you see in your community? We're going to talk about the environment together. We're going to work through that and talk about how our stewardship is also the stewardship of creation. When we think about that, we remind ourselves that everything we've been given, all of God's gifts, are a part of the work that we do in stewardship. Finally, we're going to finish the year by talking about planned gifts. And we're going to be talking about how our legacies are created in our churches, in ourselves, and our families. And we're going to be talking about the gratitude that we feel, that we've been given, that bursts out of us whenever we gather together. This is called a year of living generously, and next year it'll be a program that TENS will release to more dioceses, and we'll be able to offer it perhaps even to you. We also want you to make a plan. And so we've put together in our resource library a couple of tools to help you create a plan for formation that can get you through the entire year. It's instructions on how to create and incorporate events. This could be rectors forums, it could be Wednesday night groups, it could be book studies, ways to keep the formation of your gratitude and generosity and your stewardship going year round. We even created an Excel spreadsheet, which you can download and begin to use. I'm going to show you a picture of what it looks like. Why am I going into so much detail about this and helping you create a plan? It's because when we break down our church year, when we look at the ministries that we're involved with and how we can create an intentional system of gratitude and plugging these ministries into each of those pieces of gratitude, themes for the month that revolve around the liturgical year or our other metaphors in church, we reinforce that we are moving through a process of generosity together. So each month, this particular tool will help you and your stewardship team, your vestry, create a plan that underscores the kinds of ministries that you're involved in and the ways that people participate and can participate in it. The goal here is to increase everybody's awareness of what's happening in church so that they will increase their own desire to engage with it. As Matthew said earlier, am I doing all of this just to raise more money? The result of these things could be increased financial participation in your church, and we hope that that's a part of the result that you achieve with this. But the holistic goal is to create a more informed and engaged membership, people who really know how to get involved and what they're doing. That's our most advanced level of giving and year-round stewardship program development. We're going to talk about some intermediate things, and Matthew's going to come in a minute and talk about our liturgical calendar. And then I'm going to come back and finish us off with 4 easy things you can do. But before we leave this advanced round, I wonder if there are any questions or comments that have been put into the chat.
So Betty Bowerstock added something into the chat, Davey, which I think is really, really useful. We put out multiple invitations for people to join small discussion groups last fall, keeping with the 2020 TENS stewardship program. Lined up 9 leaders and only had 15 people sign up. We didn't want to assign people to groups, but that might be what's needed. Any suggestions regarding this? And then in parentheses at the end, Betty adds, we need to change the culture. That's like a fascinating answer to your own question Betty. But
Yeah.
Davey, what do you have as a recommendation
Yeah.
for getting people's?
Good deal. Well, we're going to be later in the summer, we're going to talk specifically again about small groups and your stewardship this year. Um, and so first of all, thank you for using that model last year. TENS recommended that we create small groups in our congregations to do our stewardship and to have stewardship discussions. And I know that they were hard to do. I rolled this out in my own congregation here in San Francisco, and kind of like you said, Betty, we had like 7 groups, but no more than about 5 or 6 people in each group. So we had some participation, but you know, it wasn't like they were flocking to it. And why is that? Because small groups are hard, because they do work. But the people who went through those small groups, they had a deeper level of understanding of why they were doing this work. And at the end, they asked each other to make a gift to stewardship and to the pledge for the church that year. And that was part of the goal of our small groups, is that rather than respond to the letter from the rector or other calls from the stewardship committee, we ask people in small groups to say, I've made my gift, will you join me in making yours? And they were these beautiful moments of people asking each other, not for amounts. They weren't saying, you know, like, give till it hurts or anything like that. What they were just saying was, we filled out our pledge card and sent it in, or we're going to make a pledge this year. Will you join us? It was a really beautiful moment. So I think as we move into those small groups, and as we start to gently come back into church, I think this year we have another opportunity to keep some small groups around stewardship going. Many congregations do this through maybe dinner church or house church models, and we can find ways to incorporate that as well. This year's TENS materials will also be giving you some advice on how to create some small groups around stewardship. And yes, it does need some culture change.
And I want to interject a little bit on that as well. Betty, as I read your comment, I hear that you had 9 committed leaders, which in itself is amazing, because having people leading stewardship helps them to think about themselves in a new way. So you already had 9 participants, and then you had an additional 15 people. And you might say, well, that didn't meet my expectations. But I'm like, it's great. It's fantastic. Just move the goalpost and declare a win. Like, set up 3 small groups and have 2 leaders or 3 leaders per group with that small group, and make sure that they have a rich conversation. And then what will happen is, if you say, we're going to do that again next year, if it went well and you had these 3 committed leaders with the 3 small groups helping to make those dynamic conversations that were really good, then those people might tell their friends, and other people might develop a kind of a desire to join in. So don't think 15 people and 9 leaders was not what you wanted. Just shuffle slightly and say, I'm going to put more leaders in one group, and I'm going to make sure that they have a really good experience, and build on that. And that's how cultural change works. Catherine then says, just wondering if you have any specific advice for really small parishes with part-time clergy. The resources are fantastic but challenging for little churches. Well, are we going to that now, Davey?
Yeah, we're going to go into it now as we talk about other things, but I want to mention to Catherine that even small congregations can do some kind of monthly reinforcement of where our gifts go. There is some kind of outreach. There's some kind of in-reach that your congregation is doing, and you can highlight those as a part of your stewardship. So it's not just for the big congregations with lots of clergy and, you know, a ton of groups that are represented. All sizes of congregations can be sort of sized into these models, and we can talk more specifically about them. We're going to move into a couple more practices right now that might be easier to adopt in smaller or part-time clergy congregations. And they revolve around our common metaphor of the liturgical year. Matthew, take it away.
Thank you. This might help with Catherine's comment as well, because Catherine, I'm always looking for reasons to write a letter to the congregation. I write a weekly one in my e-news. You may have a different cadence in communication with people, but you might write things regularly. And like sometimes if you can't think of a thing to write for, it's nice to write a letter about generosity, or a letter that links the theology of the liturgical calendar to some element of generosity. And here are some ideas around that. In Advent, to a wild longing for change, we focus on our gratitude for all we've received and communicate our hope for justice and peace. There's a way of writing a letter to your congregation in the middle of Advent that links some of the themes of generosity and gratitude to the Advent themes itself, and hopes to get people thinking in line with gratitude and stewardship. Christmas is all about gifts. The greatest gifts are the ones that we give to each other through our faithful generosity and abundant love. You might, give a gift to the world by contributing to in your parish this Christmas. Do you have a Thanksgiving or a Christmas feeding program, even if you're not big enough as a church to run that yourself? Is there one in the local community that you could ask people to volunteer for and participate in as a way of generating generosity, or is there one that you could support? Could people support the life of the church around Christmas time in its general mission to people? Epiphany, we focus on how we are Christ's body in the world as we manifest God in our lives. We are like God to others. We see God in ourselves and in each other, for our lives, our families, and our work. Lent. Dust to Dust is a powerful reminder that plans are an essential part of faith-based fundraising and giving. And so if you are having some kind of event during Lent, to talk about planned giving might be a creative way to use that season. Easter, our faith and our works are alive, just as Jesus lives, renewed with joy and refreshed by the waters of baptism. We can't help but shout alleluias to a wild longing for love. And then I actually love doing fundraising around Pentecost. We're going to be launching a new fundraising activity at the cathedral. It's about the birthday of the church. It's about the identity of the church and the spirit of our faith scatters us in all directions as we bring healing, feeding, comfort, teaching, faith and love to a hungry world. It's about us focusing on our mission. And so there are ways of writing, preaching, having conversations about generosity and also stewardship at that time.
Yeah.
And then
Thank you, Matthew, for saying that. TENS develops as a part of its annual pledge campaign material, seasonal reflections. And in fact, Matthew wrote the one for Pentecost. And so those are available on our website. You can download them. They're a one-sheet reflection that can go in your bulletin or be emailed out, or can even be an article in your newsletter. They're written by church leaders across the country, and they help frame that particular theological season in the language of stewardship and generosity. We provide those in English and in Spanish.
Yeah.
What other things can we do, Matthew?
Liturgical calendar, dig deeper into the liturgical calendar. There are some festivals that we celebrate, some particular moments that are meaningful, not just seasons, but days. And what is it on those days that could help you to think about generosity? Or what is the star that guides you in how you in your ministry? How does your faith inform your giving at the Epiphany? On the Festival of the Presentation, one of my favorite festivals outside of Christmas and Easter themselves. I love it. When you lift up your eyes to glimpse the future of the church, what do you see? The presentation is also a really great intergenerational festival. When Simeon and Anna look into the face of the baby Jesus and see salvation there, how do you practice generosity across generations in your cathedral? You're not in a cathedral, maybe I am, in your community. Ash Wednesday, if you had to give up everything you had, would you still find yourself rich? Could you write an article or preach a sermon on that? Rogation days. Rogation days have been like forgotten in some ways, but they're being used by various people really creatively. What's our commitment to the earth? How does our stewardship for God's greatest gifts inform our generosity? On Ascension Day itself, what gifts does your church need to prepare itself for future generations, to serve your neighbors? I like to think of Ascension as what happens when Jesus, who lives in a particular period in history, suddenly becomes available to everybody in all times and all places. How do we become available to everybody in all times and in all places, and as a manifestation of ministry? The Transfiguration, I used to be the rector of Transfiguration. If we truly saw the face of Jesus in each other, how would we treat our neighbors? How would we provide for their needs? All Saints, what are the lessons about giving and generosity that you have learned from the saints in your life? And then the patronal feast of your church. Who are the people who left legacies and planned gifts to your church? What will your legacy be? We did a stewardship campaign at Transfiguration when I was still there. And one of the themes was the people who founded this church gave money for a vision. And it's now like 50, 60 years on. What do we want to give that will be noticed or valued in 30 years, 40 years time? What kind of heritage do we want to build on and give to the future? And we did have a conversation about that around Transfiguration Sunday, August the 6th. So yes, all of those things. As we're transitioning, can I say one other thing, Davey?
Sure.
I'm English. English people don't like talking about money. I wasn't sure if I would really get into the culture of American fundraising. And one of the things that I needed to do as the rector of a parish and the dean of a cathedral is to talk to some of my major donors about their generosity. And I was intimidated at first. What I discovered was that approaching those conversations from the perspective of a generosity model, it was really lovely. I wound up having a meal with some of the most enthusiastic people about the life of my community. And the resources became secondary to the fact that they were excited about what was going on in the life of the community. And the conversation about money could flow from there. So I stopped being intimidated about those conversations and realized that if I just have to spend an evening with some of the people that love what we're doing more than anybody else, what could possibly be more fun? Okay, that was my thing.
That's great.
Question though.
We've had a question from Jolynn, who asked us to be more specific about where the one-page reflections can be found on the website. If you go to tens.org and you look at annual pledge campaigns, and then you look at the 2021 offering, which is called Every Perfect Gift, you'll find a button where you can download the seasonal reflections. And you'll get from Advent through Pentecost, and you'll get a one pager, and you can download those and use them. Well, you can still get in on the Easter one. It's still Eastertide, and you can use the Pentecost one coming up. Those are just really great ways to you can use them in a discussion forum. You can put them into a bulletin. They each have a couple of reflection questions that go along with them. So the idea is to read a short piece and then either personally reflect on it, or you could ask those questions in a forum and get people talking about it. You could use it as sermon starter, whatever tool that you need. They're a great resource in helping you strengthen the stewardship tie with a particular liturgical season.
There's another question in the chat from Phoebe. I'm curious about your experience with cross-cultural understandings of generosity and fundraising within our seeking diversity in our congregations, which is like We could do a whole webinar on that, Davey.
We could, and actually, TENS is participating right now with several dioceses, Los Angeles, California, Massachusetts, and Washington, specifically, on creating a kind of multicultural approach to stewardship that we hope that will be ready for next year. We're looking at diversity and stewardship in our congregations, and there's no one size, right? Because we are many voices in the Anglican communion, where many cultures represented. But one of the things that we know is true, that standard pledge-based models of stewardship don't translate necessarily into every culture the same way. And so, for example, with the Diocese of Massachusetts, we're looking, they have a lot of folks who are sort of from a Caribbean or other kind of South American understanding of culture and church and giving. And the Diocese of California is looking specifically at sort of Japanese and Chinese cultures and how those are influencing giving. Los Angeles is looking at Central America and also Korea, and they're looking at ways that those communities translate. So there isn't one size. There's not going to be a single stewardship approach that tries to translate into all cultures. But what we're trying to do is create some broader tools. And this is a really multi-diocese effort. It's going to be really exciting. And TENS is really thrilled to be a part of this work. And it's big. Every time we meet, we raise more questions than we have answers. So we're working on it. Thank you. Diana asks if this PowerPoint presentation will be available. Yes, I will send out the slide decks in English and in Spanish, so you can use them in your congregation if you want to share this with your vestry or stewardship committee. All right, we've got a few minutes left, and I want to move through one last tool you can use in year-round stewardship before we finish our session and take any last questions. There are 4 easy things that you can do right now in your congregation to create some kind of year-round stewardship formation. It begins with this understanding from Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Like humility, generosity comes from seeing that everything we have and everything we accomplish comes from God's grace and God's love for us. Certainly, it is from experiencing this generosity of God and the generosity of those in our life that we learn gratitude and to be generous to others. So try these 4 things this year. Offer a book study. This can be done following a Sunday service, on a Wednesday night, in a virtual book group, in any way that you might do this. And I have 2 books in mind. The thing I love about both of these books is that they can be read in about 15 minutes. So for those groups that don't want a long reading assignment, you can get through these really quickly. The first, Henry Nouwen's A Spirituality of Fundraising, is perhaps one of the most beautiful books on generosity and fundraising in the church ever written. It is filled with Henry Nouwen's beautiful approach to the world and mastery of language. And it is just short, to the point, scriptural based, beautiful tools on teaching about our generosity and how fundraising, giving, is a spiritual act in and of itself. The other book that I recommend is Charles Clowen, who is the planned giving consultant for the Diocese of Maryland, where he's been doing this ministry for more than 6 decades. He offers a book called 1 Minute Stewardship, Creative Ways to Talk About Money in Church. You can buy both of those on Amazon. We have links to them off of our resource library recommendations, and you can find how to access those. These are great books to use in a book study in your congregation. Conduct a mid-year budget and mission review to report on ministry impacts. So this is about not recreating your annual meeting, But looking about halfway through a year, where you are with your budget, where you are with your ministries, show some impact, bring some stories in. So maybe bring someone from your food pantry or your senior program or your preschool or something that's out in the community, or maybe your pastoral care team. Maybe there are some experiences, anonymous, of course, that they want to share about the work that they're doing or how they're connecting. There are so many ministries happening in your congregation. Use this opportunity midway through the year to help people understand what the impact of their gifts are. It also helps remind us as we move into that summer giving slump to get current on your pledge, and reminds people where their money is going. It's kind of like driving down the road through construction season and seeing that sign, your tax dollars at work, dot, dot, dot. Well, this is about your gift to the church and how it's being used, reminding people that it does more than enter the budget, but it funds real work that's happening in your community. Engage in storytelling. So I talked about that money autobiography earlier. This is one question that you could ask in a small group that could help you create some really fulsome discussion about stewardship in your congregation. And it's trying to engage us on how has money played a role in your life and how has your attitude changed as you've experienced the different milestones in your life. Finally, preach about stewardship outside your pledge campaign season. Jesus talked about it a lot, as I said. 40% of the parables have something to do with money or possessions or our relationship to those things. I bet you can find something midway through the year, a gospel or a reading that relates somehow to our generosity, our stewardship, our responsibility to each other. Preach a stewardship sermon in a month that has nothing to do with, and you can fill out your pledge form at the end of this conversation. It's really helpful to separate the message of stewardship from the annual cycle of asking for money. So these are just 4 quick things that you can do in your congregation this year to enforce and reinforce your stewardship and your generosity. We have materials coming out for TENS this year. Our annual pledge campaign is being translated and uploaded to the website as we speak. So that will be available in June, and you'll be able to access it as TENS members. Are there any last questions before we finish our work today? Thank you for your participation. It's been beautiful.
Skip has just said very much for all the specific tools provided during the session, especially the Excel file. So you're welcome.
Somebody likes my Excel file. Good. Thank you. Wonderful. Our resource library at TENS is robust, and we're adding new things all the time. If there's a tool that you're using and you love it and you've found it, please email it to me, davey@tens.org. And if it's great and it's wonderful, we'll put it up on our website and we'll give you credit for it. We really love to accumulate resources, put them into our library, and share them with the world. So please use them.
Malcolm says, thank you. Malcolm McLaren, one of the most wonderful people I know on this earth. Thank you, Malcolm. Thanks so much for all your good work. From Catherine. Linda, excellent. You said that twice. That's great. And Kevin, thank you. Much food for thought. Look forward to hear more and see all the tools. Kevin from St. John's, Austin, Texas. Thank you and God bless you in your work. This was a very useful session. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you. Practicing gratitude and generosity, and we're practicing accepting thanks and gratitude from you. Thank you so much. This has really been a pleasure. And Matthew, as always, thank you for collaborating with me and joining me in this work. I really appreciate your time and all of your attention today. So finally, we will upload this recording to YouTube, and send it out to you later today, along with the slides and links for various articles that have been referenced today. Signing off in San Francisco. Matthew, have a beautiful day in Sacramento.
Bye.
Bye, friends. Thank you.